Hi, let's start the chapter. Hi. In this chapter, we will talk about planning and strategic management. What does a planning mean? And what does a planning involve? Now, in the planning, you will have something called defining goals, establishing a strategy for achieving those goals, developing comprehensive plan to integrate and coordinate the work required to achieve the goals. So why do we need a plan? Um, I always say plan is a benchmark in a way, and also as a communication tool. Let's say you are kind of trying to go from point A to B, let's say with your boat. Since you're alone, you have the total freedom to maneuver different places to reach from A to C. Like you can go through B1 or B2 and get to point C because you are alone. Now, if you are in a ship and trying to get from point A to C, the same point, you cannot do that as you wish. Going through B1 or B2, you have to set up a plan and early. In letting everybody in your ship who is involved in moving that big ship from A to B, what's your direction? You have same thing with the plane, by the way. But the reason for doing that, because um, the engineers who's in charge of the engine needs to know where he can stop to do his maintenance, do the oil changes, and all these things. The chef who cooks the food in your ship needs to know how many days it's going to take to reach from point A to point C, so he prepare enough food on the ship, and so on. Even the crews needs to know where they can stop so they can get out and take a break or do whatever they have necessary to do. That's the sailors. So actually, a plan is to synchronize the journey with others so the others will be prepared to support you to reach to a point from to your goal. And that's the reason in mid-size, large size, even small size with the 2 3 employees there, you might need a plan. You might not stick to the plan 100%, but definitely you need a plan to progress. As example, which is I brought in the class, let's assume there is a company who is planning to, I don't know, expand in their activities in Canada, from Canada. They are active in Canada. They want to be active in, for example, in Philippines. The apps that they are using right now currently is only English language. And probably they're not using the cloud because it's a one location. But once you decided to expand to Philippines, here's an issue. You need to make a decision that you need a new manpower, which is you have to let the HR know about your plan. You probably need a new setup of IT, whether you're going to do it as a cloud or you have a copy of some of your applications in Philippines. So the IT manager needs to know what kind of a software he needs, whether his software is compatible in Philippines or not. Um, all other activities, maybe he needs to make the language. He needs to make it Tagalog, for example. Uh, he probably needs to look at the digitals, the taxes system for the financial. They need to understand that you're planning to expand in Philippines. So they want to examine the tax system there, how it works, the payroll, the income tax, all these things, and the list goes on. So that's the reason you need to do a plan and follow the plan as a benchmark for the whole organization. So that they will be preparing their own plan to support you to reach to your goal. Now, what types of planning there? There is what you call informal planning. No document, often not shared with others. It's a general rather than specific, and lack of continuities, typical characteristic of a smaller enterprise. So you have your own business, or you are made of two people. You sit over a coffee and speak with your friend, saying, "Okay, we're gonna expand in Standback too, beside working in Winnipeg." And you agree, both of you, he's aware of it. This is a kind of an informal. Then you have what you call the formal plan. It's a written, specific, covering a defined period or activities. It also involved shared goals with a specific action program for work units and managers to follow. I was bring you an example of doing a business plan for expanding to higher education, for example, how we went on building that plan. Now, some other reasons for the planning. Planning provides a direction to managers and employees, so they know what's going on and which direction they are going to. Planning reduces uncertainties, and you always seeking certainties in companies so the employees can be more productive at their work in general. Planning reduce overlapping and wasteful activities, and planning sets goals or standards that helps facilitate measurement and control. So it's another word, benchmarking. So you need to benchmark whether you have reached to that plan, you altered from that plan, adjusted, or you over accomplished the plan. But there is a criticism of the plan where planning may create rigidity, stiffness, hardness. So the thing is, everybody sticks to that plan and they don't want to alter that. So that might be making the company a less flexible. Formal plan cannot replace your intuition and creativities. So managers should have some kind of an intuition and creativities, or even individual, where in some cases you might alter or divert away from your formal plan. A planning focuses managers' attention on today's competition, not tomorrow's survival. So most of the plans, they not taken into consideration how they gonna survive tomorrow, how they will be expanding today, how they are doing today's business. One of the things that you might want to think about it, that how I'm gonna survive tomorrow, and it should be part of your plan also. That's a sample that how I built the plan for Iraq education business. Now, formal planning reinforces success, which may lead to failure. It means it's sometimes, put it this way, Formal planning put some kind of a standard unattainable, in that cause of probably a failure. Once you have your, for example, in the entrepreneurship, once you have a plan saying, I'm going to make, I'm going to make $1 million, and you don't make $1 million, you say, oh, I failed. And if you say, I'm going to make $60,000 and you made $100,000, you succeed. So it's good to have really a reachable a plan. Uh, Nothing to reinforce strongly on success. You have to enforce on a reachable plan that is will result with your accomplishment to reach the success of it. How does managers now? How do managers set goals and develop plans? All the managers need to develop some kind of a plan, whether it's a sub-plan or when a CEO builds its own plan, they have to build a plan that supports the CEO's goals. So how do managers set goals and develop plans? They look at the goals and objectives. So what's the desired outcome from individual, group, and organization? So they don't usually have a tendency, managers looks at the input, the good manager looks at the outputs. What's the desired outcome from individuals, from the group, from the whole from the organization, or from that department? Then also looks at strategies and a plan. So let's say you are the head of a team in IT. You need to set up a strategy and plans, document of how to meet these. So there is desired outcome. That's what you want to do. That's the goal you want to reach for individual or a group or organization. Then you need to do a document how we will meet that. How the resource will be allocated and scheduled. In the plan, you're already going to say, if I'm going to reach to that goal, I need these resources. I need these type of resources to reach that, and how you're going to schedule that. So let's look at this traditional goal setting. And in the traditional goal setting, what can go wrong there? So if you look at this, probably you know that goals are set at the top of the organization and broken into subgroup and for each organization level, and intended to direct and guide and constrain from the above, the top, to the bottom. So the top manager here, if you notice, what he's going to say, just a second. He says, top manager objective says, we need to improve the company performance. That's kind of a loose setup without measurement and anything. Now, the division manager objectives becomes, I want to see a significant improvement into this division profit. So there, they're looking for a performance. Here, start looking for a profit. The department manager objectives become increasing the profit regardless of the means. And the individual employee objective becomes, don't worry about quality, just work fast. So suddenly, from being improving the performance to become just work and fast, and who cares about the qualities? And that's one of the problems that can go wrong without putting a bench in your plan and a clear directions. So what they do mostly is called MBO, and that's also used in the IT strategy, IT implementation, One of the things that Oracle use is called management by objectives approach. And it's basically, it has 6 steps. First, you need to do a definition of firm's overall goals. What's the goal overall? And then once you have the firm's overall goal, then you start establishment of the objective per employee. So I have a goal, and then you divide the objective of employees per employees, and then you link the objective with the incentive. So now the employee knows exactly what is their objective, and it cannot be converted. You don't need to, you just don't leave it for the employees to figure out how to reach to their objective. You set up the objective properly, and then you link kind of an incentive. Incentive could be payment or whatever, promotions or something like that. Once you do that, you measure the progress of performance. Now, how would I know? How would I measure my progress? That's another challenge. You can measure your progress according to your competition benchmarking, or you measure your progress according to your current and previous historical data of the performance indicators. Once you measure the progress of the performance, then you get the feedback on the performance and a training. So if you see that it's that performance is not helped to accomplish your goals, that means you need to maybe add more resources or train your employees to do a better job or to be more efficient and effective. Once you do that, you get your feedback on the performance and training, then you create incentive distributions. Now, most of major IT softwares, they do that. They have this approach. If I can tell you about probably benchmarking, one of the questions that's raised in any client says, well, have you done a stress test on your application? For example, in education, they will ask you, how high is your stress test? And they measure it based on, for example, FTE, which is called full-time equivalencies. Now, full-time equivalencies are for the student. So you might have 15,000 students, but they do a part-time. And that's equal, the 15,000 students, 50% part-time equal with the 7,500 full-time equivalencies. The benchmarking might be different in a banking. Benchmarking might be that has a different measures in other industries. But you need to do some kind of a benchmarking, whether to your people or to your app that you are utilizing. Some criticisms about MBO, management by objectives. Management by objective works if you know the objectives. 90% of the time, you don't. That's what they usually say. But as my belief, it's good to have objectives, and maybe you reach higher or lower because you need to have some kind of a benchmark to test your performance. Eliminate management by objective and substitute it with the leadership, and the reader usually are the one will be you giving them the goal. They will build their own goal, and then they have the flexibilities on how to reach the goal. The other criticism, MBO and performance appraisals as typically practiced are inherently self-defeating over the long run because they are based on a reward punishment psychology that serve to intensify the pressure on the individual while really offering a very limited choice of objectives. That's probably, I've seen that. One of the IT company, uh, they left it to decide the MBOs and the performance appraisals to the hand of uh, probably the cost accounting or the chartered accounting team that they have. And what happened there is basically they decided that every employee should put at 21 man days worth of work, and he has to bill it to his boss or different department. When they came and started calculating, they saw some people build monthly, only 15 man days, and some people build 27 man days. What they did not realize, there might be an issue with some employees who are very efficient. So they get the work and they can do it earlier and they just build less hours. And others might also can finish it earlier, but they worry about that showing the performance so they can bill higher. And if you are in a professional job, sometimes you have the freedom of overbilling and underbilling. So the people who was worried about their jobs, they start overbilling, and the other departments were, accepting that because they have no other option. The other people who knew about their job very well, they just sent the real billing. What showed for the accountant department is these people are underperformers who build really the amount. And the ones who really overbuild show that they are performing and effective in their work. I mean, as a number wise. So that caused some discomfort within the organization where some people just resigned. The very efficient one and the very effective one that just moved from that IT company to others. And that's probably one of the biggest criticism I've witnessed in other companies, some companies, that's like we had few employees of that company, which is a very effective employees, joined us because of that MBO that they put in it. Anyway, there is other ways of saying is doing it is putting a SMART goal. What's a SMART goals is be specific, outcome rather actions, measurable, but an effective way of measuring. Most of the time, you probably need to have more ways of measuring the performance of your employees or your colleagues than, for example, in this case, the billing way. Achievable and attainable. So that's what is employees' input. Realistics with flexibilities, as we said, so uh, doing it, and timely. So the SMART stands for specific as measurable, achievable and attainable A, and realistic with the flexibilities and timely, and we'll explain these performance measurement. Now, the planning tools and techniques. So you are about to write your plan. So what's your tools that you can use and what's the techniques is there for you? First of all, you look at the forecasting. So looking at the market, looking at the historical data, looking at the, you know, uh, pistols, your current data, and your strength. You with the forecasting means predicting the future and developing plans accordingly. How real is the forecasting is not always, I mean, it's called forecasting, so it's not, does not mean 100%, but once again, you need to have some kind of a forecasting setup for you. And you should have some kind of a contingency plan just in case your forecasting uh, less than what was coming in, what is coming in, or more than what is coming in. So you have some kind of a contingency plan, identifying alternative plan when things aren't as expected. And there is scenario planning, which is a predicting various outcomes and making plans for each. So the scenario planning is about, say, you have two locations where you're supposed to provide them a support, and you found out that the expansion that's happening, say, in your Saskatchewan branch, needed more employees, and they needed more support on the spot. So uh, you need to have some kind of a scenario where you're predicting various outcomes and making the plans for each. What will happen? Would you be able to provide that kind of support in a different location, or can you do it online, for example, in this case? And once again, we go back to benchmarking. So you need to develop a plan based on the practice of competitor. Here they're talking about the practice of competitor, but actually there is two type of benchmarking. One benchmarking looking at the competition, and you need to measure it against the competition. And the second, you need to benchmark it about against your historical data that you have developed. So the process of planning is a framework for the process necessary to reach a goal. Components of a strategy. In the beginning, we said why we need a plan and a strategic plan, and why we need a strategy, because without a strategy, we will not be able to reach from point A to B. So you need a strategy, and you need to understand there is a strategy, and it breaks down to tactics. Tactics can be changed a little bit, but the strategy has to be a very clear and synchronized with probably uh, most of the employees or all the employees. Sometimes you can see the strategy within the ad they put it on the TVs or the newspaper. We want to be number one in serving food. We want to be the number one in cost effective of electronics or the support. We will provide, we want to be the fastest support providers for HRM solution in the market. That's a strategy that they built. Now, one of the component of the strategy is resources. An organization assets such as your financial, physical, human, and intangible used to develop, manufacture, and deliver the product and service to customers. If you made up 4 or 5 people, your IT support, and you say, I will provide IT support for Bank of Montreal, then you need to convert that to a probably IT support contract. And then you probably would realize that you would not be able to accommodate the requirement of Bank of Montreal. You don't have the financial, you don't have the physical. Maybe you have a few people out of these 5 people that they can provide these kind of support, and you don't have the tools, which is the tangibles, and you don't have the know-how, all of them, which is intangible things that you can do. So you need to use these abilities, that the things that you have, as a resource to look into how you're going to build the strategy. Capabilities, which is an organization's skills and abilities to enable it to do the work and activities needed in the business. So if you cannot provide software support, for example, in the field of artificial intelligence, you don't have that skills, you cannot go further and say, I'm going to expand in that. At least you need to know what you need in this case to do so. Then you have what you call the core competencies. An organization's major value, creating skills, capabilities, and resources that determines competitive weapons. So what's your core competencies? It's a very important to understand where is your core, and accordingly, you can determine your competitive abilities. We'll look at this video. Your strategy needs a strategy. Pretty much interesting. And he's going to explain approach to winning. And here we can look at the video first from Potter, who invented the Potter competitive strategy, and then we sit and define the cost of a leadership strategy, the differentiation strategy, the focus strategy, and start in the middle component. So it's about degree of rivalry. You're looking at a threat of a new entrant. You're also looking at the threat of substitutes. You're looking at the power of suppliers, which is we explained very early how you look at their suppliers' power, and look at the buyer's power or the client's power. And also you need to evaluate the complement. These always dynamic, and it's different from one industry to another industry. And it's called Porter's 5 forces. Thank you.